If you recall the passages we looked at on Sunday, we had some really good discussion already on this idea of worshiping through hard times. And it's been a fantastic conversation already. And I was excited for this one quite a bit. And before I forget, there are lessons on the back for next week's class. Brace is going to lead us through worship through giving, so that'll be a good lesson as well. But this idea of worshiping in hard times, because that's something that's a huge struggle, I think, for a lot of people. Because I know, and once again, it's not a secret that I'm younger, and I haven't been through as much as other people have here, but I recall some struggles I've been through in life, and sometimes it's hard to look at God in a positive way, and that's just an honest way to look at it. It's hard to worship Him and praise Him in times where it's like, okay, I can't even feel the guy, or I can't even understand what he's trying to accomplish in these situations. So I think it's something that we all can relate to and we all struggle with. And I think these passages, we looked at Job and Habakkuk, they had some great examples on, both of those people had some struggles, and we talked about how Job lost everything, and talked about how Habakkuk in the situation that he was in was just, trembling in fear and looking upon God. And, it said there in Habakkuk 3, look, nothing's going right, but I'm still going to praise you. I'm still going to worship you. And so I think we learned some good mindsets, some good lessons from those characters. So let's go ahead and turn it over to the back side of that sheet. And here's 4 discussion questions. Hopefully we can take some time and look at the significance through a lot of these ideas. But I hope you use some of your personal experience. I hope you use some of what you learned on Sunday from the characters we looked at from the passages. Because I think our personal experience can definitely relate to how we feel on these kinds of things. And I think we can go into what our experience is with worshiping God in these times and stuff like that. So question number 1 starts us off pretty easy, but ask, why can worship to God be so difficult during times of trial and hardships in life? Why during these times that we're struggling, why does it make it hard to worship God? What have you experienced in your own life?
Sometimes I'm just mad.
Sometimes I'm just mad. Mad at Him, mad at the situation, a little bit of both. Yeah. Anger is, I've struggled with anger a lot in my life, and looking back, there's been times where anger has played a fact where it's like, why, God? We see David ask that question, I think, in the Psalms a lot, and see his frustration, and then we can relate that to our own lives. And like Aaron said, sometimes I'm just mad. And I think that can definitely affect our mindset and our mood. And when I'm mad, I know it destroys my whole mood. It destroys my whole mindset to where I got nothing positive up there. I got nothing good up there in my mind, and the last thing I want to do is trying to find some positivity to worship God. Joy, you had something?
I have felt like He was punishing me.
Okay.
And not listening to my prayer, and I couldn't understand why.
Yeah, those are, I think, each 3 of those things you said are very, I've struggled with those things. First of all, being punished, that God is punishing me for different things. And then not feeling heard. Who here has not felt heard by God sometimes? I'll put my hand up. There's been times where I prayed and it just seems like, I know I didn't say that right, but I think everybody got it. My wife's over there. But there's been times where I prayed and sent a prayer to God, and at the end of it, I'm like, I feel nothing, and that's just the way it was. And I think we've all had some experience with that. So yeah, I think those are some ways to hinder us in our worship in that way. Addie?
I've definitely experienced in the past taking a very self-centered approach to whatever I'm going through.
Yeah.
Where I'm just thinking, like, woe is me, I'm the only one who's struggling with this.
Yeah.
Or how am I going to get myself out of this? And it's me.
Yeah.
And then until typically it's someone else on the outside who is like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
You have God.
Yeah.
It's just a maybe mental cloudiness where
Yeah.
kind of forgetting that God can get us out of this, or just entrusting on this.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of selfishness can come into control, because I get the same way. I'm the only one who can get myself out of this situation. I'm the one who wants to be in control, and I don't want anybody else to be a part of this. I can do this. And then it's like Addie said, well, let's take a step back. But yeah, I think that can, and that mental cloudness of nobody else is going to understand what I'm going through, and how could God understand what that whole mental cloud of figuring out there seems to be a disconnection between God and myself, and those points, it's like we have to take a step back and remind ourselves there's nothing He can't help us through, right? There's nothing that He can't help us get through. So Margaret, you had your hand up?
Yeah, and I think that basically I treated everything that was thinking kind of the same way that we're self-centered, but we see God as a person who brings to us good things, and so therefore we expect those good things, because that's what we want, that God
Okay.
is gracious and good and patient, and when things don't go away, we might say, what's happening? And then, when that doesn't happen, then we begin to doubt that God is our prayers, or that He answers, that He answers our prayers.
Yeah.
And we've been, when we're really, really down, we begin to possibly even doubt His power.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. But I think that's a wonderful point, and I didn't even think about that. But this idea that a lot of us tend to think of God as, God and goodness go together, and that nothing, nothing sad, nothing disappointing, nothing negative could be even associated with Him. And I think Margaret's got a point there, because I look back in my life now, and there have been some times where like, oh yeah, I don't want to involve God and His goodness in this. And then Margaret's right. The second thing is doubt. I think doubt can really hinder us in times where we start to doubt who God is and the nature of God. Because God's nature is goodness, as we mentioned. God's nature is to help us. God's nature is to guide us. And when we start to push away from that, and when we start to think, hey, it's me who needs to do this, me who needs to figure this out, we start to doubt what God can do. And when we do that, we usually believe what we say, right? I think Aaron and I have, or maybe you mentioned it in class, or I don't know, but this idea that when you say stuff in your head and when you repeatedly put ideas in your head, you start to believe it, even if it's not true. And I think if we do that with God and who He is, we say, hey, He doesn't want to deal with me, or hey, I can do this on my own. We start to believe that. And that hinders us in our mindset to where, like Margaret said, we doubt it, but we shouldn't doubt it. Because of His goodness, His nature is to want to help us. We should want to give ourselves to Him in these times and find ways to worship. Anything else on? Go ahead, Salem.
I was just going to say, there are times when we cause our own hardship.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're bringing our sin into the situation. And so sometimes I think it's that shame that you carry around, like after that.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I can't take this to God because like I caused
Yep.
this. But ultimately, like He's the only one that can help you out of that.
Yes.
So you're really just kind of running away from the solution at the same time.
Yeah. Shame's really hard because it's a real thing, especially with God. Like, I've prayed to God before, and I know He knows what I've done, but we're instructed and we've shown example that we need to confess to God. Say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or hey, I've messed up here. And when I've done that in my life, I've never felt more shame, I think. I think there's times where, I could tell anybody else about things I've done, and it's shameful, but not on the level of, man, I have to approach God. All right, God, and once again, we associate God with goodness and God with everything almighty, and when, we approach His throne with, hey, I did exactly what you told me not to do, and I've done it previously, and I keep messing up with it, there's a lot of shame, and that can really put a disconnect between us and God, because in our minds we're like, I can't face that. We doubt ourselves in that moment. I cannot face this trial, and I cannot give it to God. So I think that's a good point there, talking about, all these things can really hinder us, and that's what makes it difficult to find worship. Did you have something?
Well, someone said most of everything I was going to say.
Okay.
Nailed it. The only thing I would add is a message just from personal experience. When, in the beginning, when things weren't instantaneous, I was like, what?
Yes.
So I struggled with that a lot in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm a really impatient person, so I understand that. I want things now. I don't want to wait for things. And when, kind of going back to what Joy said earlier, you know, I struggle when I feel God's not there, and that's probably just me being impatient. God, I want it now. I want results now. I want to be better now. I want you to fix this now. And what we understand, you know, I've been reading Ecclesiastes recently, and everything is good in its season. Everything is good in God's time. God has a time for everything. And when we start to trust in God and trust in His will and His timing for things, it makes it easier. Now, it's hard to be patient. I won't doubt that. It's hard to be patient. But when you see and when you have that full trust in your relationship with God, you understand, yeah, this is hard now, but He's teaching me something through this. And what I will learn from this, He will show me that there's a time that it will get better, and I can look back on this time and appreciate it more. That's another thing I think that goes along with this lesson. Being able to worship God for things He's done for us in the past, when we just now realize it. You know, if you can look back on situations and say, wow, He really did know what He was doing in that situation, and then just right then and there giving Him praise for that, saying, God, I didn't see it then, but I see it now. I think He wants us to acknowledge that we see Him, and we see Him working in our lives. So I think that's a phenomenal point. Because patience is hard. Patience is really hard. Anything else on that point? It is just a fact that it's hard to worship God in hard times, and that's just what it is. But it's not impossible. We have to remind ourselves that, you know, going back to Salem's point on shame and going back to all the things we've talked about, God wants us to come to Him in these vulnerable moments. God wants us to come to Him on our knees, on our last, you know, when we can't take it anymore. He wants us to do that. He welcomes that with open arms. And maybe we have some things to be shameful about, but God will never shame us away. God will never throw us away for the things we've done. His grace is so powerful. Going back to what Margaret said, we can't doubt the power that He has and the grace that He has. I mean, it changes our lives. And as hard as it is to go through these things, He welcomes all of this with open arms. He wants us to be vulnerable with Him. He wants us to see Him in these moments. And so just remind yourself of that as well. So question number 2. What are some ways we can still worship God even when we are feeling discouraged or overwhelmed? We'll start with that, and then we'll go on to the second question after we have some discussion there. But what are some ways that we can worship God even when we are feeling discouraged or overwhelmed? Courtney?
Being honest with God and stuff.
Yes.
So in discouraging times, the first thing I do as soon as I wake up is I instantly just go to God.
Yes.
Trying to start my day off better and starting it with Him seems to help the negativity
Yeah.
a lot. So I'm not constantly in the worries about what I'm doing. I just address it with Him.
Yeah, Courtney's got a good point on starting your day, you know, with a little bit of spiritual time and you and God time. Really makes the day go better, and you can reflect on that throughout the day. But yeah, I mean, we already talked about in this class how prayer is a big way we can worship God. So when we're feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed, and it's really cool to hear Courtney say that now in her life, this is the first thing she thinks about. So I should go to God with this. I should allow Him to help me through this. So yeah, finding ways to instantly think, I need to go to God with this. He's going to help me, and I can recognize that. Ashley?
I have a list of don'ts and then I have a list of do's.
Oh.
One of my do's was don't forget to tell others of God's goodness and mercy. And one of the things that has impacted me the most is these parents who have lost children, you know, early to sickness or car wrecks.
Yeah.
And you can tell the ones that have a relationship with God by what they say
Yeah.
in their posts. Like, they start out the post by saying God is still good.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind and, you know, just makes me think twice, like, would I be like that
Yeah.
if I lost one of my children?
Yeah. God is so good, or God is still good is 4 powerful words in these kinds of times. And like Ashley said, to be able to be impacted by the faith of others. And that's a big thing. And I think that's why she emphasized, share your faith with others. Don't hesitate on times where you have the opportunity to share what God has done for you in your life to others, because that makes an impact on them. That's a way to worship. That's a way to spread his kingdom. That's a way to spread this news to different people. And that's a way to recognize and glorify God's name. And those 4 words, God is still good, that is glory. That is honor. That is, trust beyond all measure of understanding that, man, this has been one of the worst experiences of my life. But God is still good, And that can be hard to say sometimes, but when you really commit to that, God is still good. It doesn't make it easier sometimes, and maybe it's going to be still really hard, but that's a way to worship. It's a way to glorify God in those times. Joy?
This may sound strange, is that I'm actually encouraged by when Jesus asked for God to remove this from him, and God said no.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because Jesus was bad, obviously.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because God didn't love Jesus. It was because God had a motive, and his motive was for us, the love and the motive for us to be saved and with him.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with what that circumstance was, except that it had to happen.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like he was punishing Jesus for not listening to him. He just knew better.
Yeah. And I don't think that's strange at all. I look at the example that Jesus gives and find ways in my life to be like, wow, that is, I can relate to that on a level to where, yes, in this instant, God had told Jesus no. And we reflect on our lives, God has told us no. But we look in the situation, God had a reason for telling Jesus no. Jesus knew that and trusted him in that moment. Are we going to do the same? When God tells us no, how are we going to react? Right? So I think that's a cool way to look at it. Emily?
I think back to what Bryce said on Sunday about how you don't know if it was stating that God is this, or if it was kind of a pep talk to yourself, like, yeah, okay, I believe this,
Yeah.
because I know it's always been true in the past, so it's going to be true in the future, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. So just sticking with the routines that you have set in place, because at the end of the day, God is still God.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this might suck, but God is still God, and frankly, you're not the main character and you have no clue what's happening around you. God is still God. God's fighting a war way above you.
Yeah.
So just stay in your routine, push through, you'll make it out.
Yeah, keep having the priorities stay the same even when situations happen. And that goes back to what Addie said. We're not the main character. God is in control. He's the one all in control of this. Trust that. Keep continuing to pursue in that. Lois had something, then we'll get to Bryce.
When we look back on these sorrows and troubles that we've had, think how much we have grown.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have experienced that and how much God is in control.
Yep. Yeah, he's teaching us so much. And that's what we emphasize a little bit in our scriptures on Sunday. But through these trials that we have, God teaches us so much. We learn so many different lessons, and we can find ways to appreciate that. And when we appreciate that, even if it's months, years, whatever it is later, when we find time to appreciate that, we can give glory back to God. When we can reach out back out to him and say, okay, yeah, you were working in that moment, and you taught me so much, and I wouldn't be where I am today, wouldn't be the person I am today, wouldn't have the faith I have with you today if it weren't through how you taught me in those moments. So I think that's a fantastic point. Bryce?
Serving others is a great way to worship God in the midst of trials. Because one of the problems with suffering is we get in our own head and all we can think about is our own pain.
Yeah.
It's me, I'm going through this.
Yeah.
Nobody else knows what it's like. And if we can get out of our own head and stop thinking selfishly and start thinking about how we can help other people. Number one, sometimes we realize we don't have it so bad.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are struggling a lot more than we are. But just getting our focus away from ourselves and onto other people can be a great way to honor God and his worthiness. But it can also be a way to help us out of our own pain and difficulty.
Absolutely.
At least through it.
Yeah. Because going back what Addie said earlier, she said it's usually others that really bring me back to the mindset I need to be, or really to the place that I need to be. And I go back to creation, and God built us to be together for a reason. Loneliness is not good in a sense. Separating ourselves and isolating ourselves will not help these situations. God, I mean, look at the family we have here. I mean, God has blessed us in so many ways that isolation would not be a good idea. As Brace is saying, there's so many ways that we can be impacted by others and sharing our lives with others. Because once again, they're going to help us out of it, and they're going to turn us to the right direction. And it goes back to the point: God did not mean for us to be alone, and a lot of different aspects in our life. So I think that relates very well. Anything else, Addie?
You kind of said it, but on the flip side of what Grace said, allowing others to bear our burdens.
Yes.
Because you're allowing them to worship God in service to
Yep.
you and fulfilling the work of the church. And I know that there are people in this room who long to bear others' burdens.
Yes.
Who want to be there.
Yes.
And helping them do that.
Yeah.
And I know that's easier said than done, because that requires a connection and sharing and work.
Yeah.
But they also point you
Yes.
in the right direction.
Yes. I mean, that's a commandment for a reason, right? To bear one another's burdens. Because God saw the value in what we can do for each other. And the way that I have the whole weight of the world on my shoulders, and then having other people surrounding me to take that weight off one at a time. And just how much better I feel. And Addie's right. God has put it on so many people's hearts that they want to serve others. It's something that they take great pride in understanding that they are doing a good work of service in a worship to God and then a service to others. And so do not neglect the way that we can serve others in these times, but also fulfill our roles of helping one another out in these situations. I think that's a key point. Chip?
I think all Christians in America, all of us, probably eat twice as much food as we should, and we all probably have at least one brand new pair of clothes
Yeah.
to use, but I think that when we don't give God glory is when, right in the moment, something happens and we just think it's awful. And
Yeah.
it kind of just distracts us, and that gives Satan a way to take our minds away from God and all the stuff that He's done for us, and it kind of makes us think about ourselves instead of realizing that everything isn't about us.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to that point that, it's not all about us. We can't be selfish in it.
Stress kind of can just impact on
Yeah, and you're...
that, and then we get further and further away from the right mindset.
Yeah.
It just makes that worse for us too.
Yeah, and you're right, because Satan likes to hit us when we're most vulnerable, too. Like, what you said, right when things happen, right in the moment, it's hard to recover from those.
Then we don't console with other people because we're so hurt on the
Yes.
inside that we forget that there's other people around us that can help us.
Yes. Yep, and that's what it's meant for. So, yep. Anything else on that? Part A. Part B asks, how can these things strengthen our faith? We've hit on it a little bit, but what does that really look like? I mean, Lois mentioned that we learn a whole lot of lessons, but what else strengthens our faith through these times?
When you get to the other side of it.
Yep.
And then stop and really evaluate what happened and you find that whatever the solution was, you see what's happening.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a big part of it. Because I think once we understand one time, I think it takes one time, maybe a little bit more, depends on the person, to see how God got us through a situation to where the next situation comes up, where's my mind going to go to? I have a deeper connection with Him now that next time something happens, it's going to be a lot quicker for me to rely on Him. Now, His response and His timing is up to Him, but for me in my mindset, it's, on to the next and whatever happens next. My relationship and my connection with God is stronger through the first time after I made it through. Margaret said we realized that God was working in those moments to where the next time it's, okay, He's going to do it again. He's going to provide again, so I'm going to trust in Him, and I'm going to, let's do this again. Ashley?
Go along with what Margaret said. I'm always quick to tell, friends and family that God is not bound by time and space, so He's already on the other side of this trial.
That's true.
waiting for us.
Yeah.
But it's very hard for me to remember that and apply it when I'm going through it.
It is. It is. But I think that's true. I mean, I didn't even think of it that way, but I think it's true. God knows the way to get out of it even before it starts. And God knows the way that we need to rely on him before it starts. And he's so on the other side of the finish. It's like you're in a race, you know. I don't like running. But I remember in, high school and stuff, when we did sports, we would do, conditioning and all this kinds of stuff. And when I'm running, I know there's people cheering you on the other side. And in the moment, it's terrible. I'm like, I'm dying. But there's something good on the other side, and I think that's kind of what Ash is talking about is God's goodness and his glory is waiting there. And if we can see that, if we can notice it, we'll have a little bit more, push in our step when we go through these trials and keep looking. And I think that's the point. We can look to him, look towards him, understanding that there's the end. There's the end. And that's the whole point of life as well. We go through this life, and what's the end? He's waiting there for us. He's waiting in glory for us. And that's a cool way to look at it, too. Anything else on our faith being strengthened through these times? Angie?
It's very important as we're going through it to have others acknowledge that they know we're going through it. To have someone come up and tell you, hey, I'm praying for you.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of you during this time, and I'm here for you.
Yeah.
It's very, very important.
It is.
And it gives us that knowledge that we're not alone on this earth either.
Yeah.
Yes, we have the Heavenly Father to go to, but we have one another as well.
Yeah, and that's a big point we're stressing, which is fantastic because it's so important to understand that. But, we like to be heard. We like to be seen, especially in these hard, vulnerable times when we feel alone. I reflect on my life when I've been going through something, and then I get that one text or one call or, whatever. It's like just that assurance and it makes you feel good. And it shows you that, hey, God's put people in my life that are looking out for me, and they're going to help me through this. And I think that's kind of what Angie's getting at. Chet?
Sometimes we get tested by trials.
Yep.
And God allows that to strengthen, so we can strengthen ourselves in his will.
Yeah.
And to devote ourselves more to fulfilling his will.
Yes, yeah, I think so. Because through trials, we can understand that we need to do things differently. Because according to His will, we need to change our lives in these trials and change the way that we live. But that strengthens that edge on our relationship with God, understanding that each thing we go to, we can get stronger and stronger in understanding, on leaning on God for His will and leaning on Him to guide us through where He wants us to be. Joy, you had something else?
I was just going to quickly say, when you were talking about the race,
Yeah.
it made me think of Hebrews 12:1, and let me just say it.
Yeah.
Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, so in my mind, you're up there going, you can go.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool to think about. But that's what we've been talking about, and that relates so well. So, well, I think that's a good discussion on that. So let's look at question 3. How can worship to God and a deeper relationship with Him, which we referenced in question 2, change our perspective on trials? And we've hit on this just a little bit, but how can our perspective change on trials when we understand what God's teaching us, our relationship with God, and then how can the worship standpoint alone, when we worship God in trials, how does that shift our mind? How does that shift our idea on what we're going through? Courtney?
I don't know if I quite understand the question, so I'm totally.
That's okay. What do you got?
So, again, this is just from personal reflection. I feel like in the beginning, when everything was rough and I was going through everything, once I really leaned on him, like, I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, like, the mountain looks super big in the valley, and the valley looks like nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that perspective changes a lot once you actually really grow in your relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because when things pop up, you're not just like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
You're so chaotic. You just go, okay, God, here we go.
Yeah. We start to look at it differently.
Yeah.
And our approach is different. as Courtney's saying, like when we first are, whether it be when we're younger or just new in Christ, or even before then, or times before then, we look and say, this is how I dealt with that when situations came up, and I freaked out and everything was terrible. And yes, I'm still going through a bad time, but I know where to look now. I know where to find relief. I know where to find help. And I think that's a great thing to understand, that our point of view changes. Our perspective changes on the first thing we think about, and hopefully should, and I'm still working on this. Sometimes I don't think of God firsthand when I need to, but our perspective changes on, I'm going to seek him first, because I know how he did it last time. And this challenge actually doesn't seem as hard to get through as it used to be, And I think there's something to say about that. What else? Joy?
So just this week, to help me, I made a card. It's big. It's not 3 by 5. It's bigger. I forget what it's called. Anyway, and the title is "God Is," and then I have scriptures and scriptures and scriptures to look up, to remind myself, to encourage myself, to bolster me up that who God actually is. He is not the boogeyman.
Yeah.
And so just reading those things about the descriptions of him
Yeah.
are very helpful to me.
Yeah. And I think you've got a point, because I think sometimes God can seem scary. I mean, honestly, I think sometimes God can seem, we're intimidated by him, and we're scared of him, and what he may think of us, or the way he works. We may be but like Joyce said, he's not the boogeyman. He's not this crazy creature who's going to ruin your life. He's actually going to change your life in a better way, and I think that's a cool story. Lois, you had something?
When I'm in some of these trials and things, I think you sing on the mountaintops, in the valleys is where you grow.
Yeah. Singing on the mountaintops is what Lois said, and then the valleys is where you grow. And our perspective on growth is huge. Because if we can understand how important growth is and how much it can really change who we are and the way we go through some of these things, that's a big perspective that changes. Understanding how important trials are and how important that growth is. Brace?
I think a solid faith in God provides an anchor through the storm.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's a picture, an image that the Hebrew writer uses in the last half of that chapter with regard to Jesus. But I mean, the point is, you're still in the storm.
Yeah.
I mean, storms, especially, I'm told, a storm on the sea can be especially terrifying.
Yep.
So you're still in the storm, but the anchor means you're not going to be moved.
Yeah.
You're ultimately not going to be shipwrecked.
Yeah, there's some security in
Through
it.
the storm.
Yeah.
So, again, a lot of the passages we've looked at, it's not that it immediately takes away the pain.
Right.
Or the difficulty, but it does mean we're going to make it through.
Yeah.
So a solid foundation, a solid faith in God can help us in that kind of way.
Hope and comfort in the midst of trials is a huge relief when we go through them. And that's, I think, what Bryce is getting at. To where if you get the image of a boat in a storm, and yes, the anchor goes down, the storm's not over, but there's security, there's stableness. And that's what God provides in those times where, hey, we're still going through it, but I'm here with you. And I'm going to make it easier on you. And I'm going to, ease the pain a little bit, right? Or I'm going to secure you a little bit more, or have you be more stable in the situation. And that's exactly what God does. I believe that. Joy?
And how often do I have access to God?
That's a good question.
24/7.
And that's the right answer.
Every second, I have access to him.
Yeah.
And I'm also thankful that we live in a free country.
Yeah.
There are people who can't worship.
Yes, but you're right on the fact that 24/7 is the access that we have to God. He doesn't limit himself to us. There's no trial that's too big for God. There's no time that's inconvenient for God. There's no exclusion of people that God wants to. I mean, he is available to everybody whenever he is needed. That shows how powerful he is. There's a lot of people on this earth. There are. There's a lot of things going on. A lot of people are going through a lot of things. But God is so powerful. It's so hard to imagine, but at the same time, when you have such a big faith in God, it's like that, because that's just who he is. And we all have access to him. And that's comforting. There's comfort. Talk about comfort and stability. Like, there's comfort and stability knowing that whenever I need him, he's a ring away. And he never has his phone on silent. He doesn't. It's not what God does. Anything else on question 3? Joy?
Just a little clarification there. Not just that God's there, it's what's keeping me from going.
Okay, yes.
I can go 24/7,
Okay.
and it's in my own mind.
Yes.
I don't.
Yes.
I can theoretically see that he's there all the time, but I need
Okay.
to see that I do have access to him, even when I don't think I do, and
Yes.
24/7.
So utilize it. Let's stop hindering our own selves from reaching out to him. Because I think Joy, that goes back to our selfishness. Joy's got a point there in saying we hinder ourselves a lot. And we draw a bridge between us and God pretty often. And we need to remind ourselves, yes, 24/7. He's available 24/7, and we need to take advantage of that. Don't be, don't say, oh, he doesn't have time for me, or maybe he's too busy. He's not. Take advantage of it. Okay, number 4. We may get through all 4 questions. That's fantastic. I love that. Because I like getting through all the questions. Not that I hate good conversation, but anyways, I'll stop rambling. How can we support members of our family? I love this question. How can we support members of our family when they seem defeated and alone while facing trials? So Angie's mentioned it, Bryce has mentioned it, but what are some practical ways we can put this into use? Courtney?
So like I said, to tell people, let them know, and then pray before you let them know this is going on. And something that I absolutely love that some members have done for me is when they notice I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
They also see that I'm isolating myself.
Yeah.
I always get an invitation for dinner.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is about food, but it just puts it in a relaxing space.
Yeah.
And then you can truly talk about what's going on. And then prayers are always good.
Oh, yeah. A good F&F, food and fellowship, is a great cure for these kinds of things. But yeah, understanding, and if we have the relationships with one another that we should have, we should be able to notice that something's off. And especially if me and looking back in the relationship I have with my wife, I know her good enough now that she doesn't have to say anything. I just feel like something's off. As human nature, sometimes we don't want to talk about it. But really checking in on one another, especially if we know, hey, that person has been going through something more recently. Check in on one another. That's a huge thing. Ashley?
Sometimes during, a crisis situation, the fog seems really thick to the person that's going through it.
Yeah.
And we can be the people that go and grab their hand, and we've got the flashlight, and we're just leading them back to
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to be the ones going, yeah, grab their hand.
Yeah, and that's huge because especially when you have people who are younger or younger in their faith, because there's so much to say with people who are close to you who have more experience than you. Because if the one with more experience truly cares about you, they will grab your hand. Say, hey, I've done this before. I can help you through this. And there's so much comfort because it's like, okay, I trust you. We've had the relationship. God's put us in each other's lives. Let's do this. But yeah, taking the initiative on helping people. But there's also the opposite of that. I'll be like, Brace, read my mind. What's the opposite of it? Ashley?
Well, I have some don'ts here, so maybe.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. But things that are not helpful is comparing.
Okay.
Or saying, I know exactly how you feel, because you don't. You
Okay.
can't.
Yeah, right.
Or saying things like, oh, you reap what you sow.
Yeah. Not quite what I'm looking for, but there's value. Because I think Ashley does have a point. Unless we've gone through the same exact situation, most of the time we don't know. But that's not what they're looking for. They're not looking for someone to say, hey, I know what you're going through. They're looking for someone to say, hey, I love you, and I'm sure this must be hard, but let me help you through this. Let me show you God. Bryce?
And the reality is, even if you've been through the same situation, you still don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
I've had several guys since Dawn died who came to me and said, you know exactly what I'm dealing with. And I said, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason I do is because my relationship with Dawn and my relationship with their wife is different.
Yeah.
We're different people. They were different people. A lot of them have been married to their spouse a lot longer than I was married to Dawn.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea how hard it is for them. I have some idea what it's like to lose a spouse.
Yeah.
And that can be helpful for us to realize it's never fair to say to someone, I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
Unless they tell you, you don't have a clue. You can't really know. You're guessing.
Yeah.
At best, your guess is educated.
Yeah.
At worst, you're destroying any opportunity you have to help.
Yeah.
So we just need to be open to letting people express where they are. And you know, the best thing Joe's friends ever did was spend a week sitting with him saying absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best thing to do is sit with somebody and say nothing.
Yeah.
You can't fix it.
Sometimes that's all it takes. And sometimes just talking out loud with people who you trust and who God put in your life, that's what it takes. I think that's where you're getting at. But Bryce is right. I mean, every situation is different. And coping with people on that level with that mindset goes a long way. But what I'm looking for, the opposite of, searching to help people, is being on the other side of that, being the one who needs help. And we've talked about it, isolation. Let people into your life. Let people know you. Let people know what you're going through. Allow others, as we've talked about already tonight, bear each other's burdens. Allow someone to take that burden from you. Don't shun people out. Allow people into your door. Bryce?
Yeah, and to the point that you're making right now, I mean, again, I'm going to just use my own example, but after Dawn died, there were numerous people who tried to help us in some of those ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes the only reason I did it is because it was, I viewed it as being for my children.
Yeah.
And so I went through it, I did it, I participated for them. And guess who also ended up benefiting?
Yeah.
Me.
Oh, yeah.
Because it got me out of my own head. It got me in a space that was a better space for me to be in.
Yep.
And I mean, it is, I don't know why it is the rule, but it is. When we are suffering and struggling, the first thing we want to do is isolate, and it is absolutely the worst thing.
It is. Agreed.
We need people to get through things. We need God to get through things. And He's given us each other as a tool for that.
Yeah.
And we need to use it.
Yeah. And you won't regret it. You won't. You'll look back on it and appreciate it and hold on to that. Let people into your lives. Get to know one another. And I tell myself this all the time, I need to get to know more people better. And that's a lesson for all of us. Let each other into your life. Let all of us into our lives together. We see each other 3 times a week mostly on a scheduled basis, and then we have other things throughout the week. We have a chance to live our lives together. Because I think a lot of the time, sometimes we reflect it on churches. Oh, I see them at church. They're my church family. You guys are my family in general. You guys have been chosen. God chose you guys to be my life family as well. To go through things, to be there for me, and just to share life with. And that's what we should do with one another. Let people in. So, fantastic conversation. I appreciate everybody's attention and their thoughts. Bryce is going to give us a fantastic lesson next week on giving. We've talked about the approach yesterday and met about it, and I think it's a great lesson for all of us. So we look forward to that on Sunday. And yeah, thank you guys again. Appreciate it.